was my prima donna moment. I'm really sorry. It's just
Well, you are. You've done all this work.
Here we
Because
are.
of you, we're here.
No, team effort, Bernard.
I always thought I'd be sleeping. I'd be sleeping in.
We might be doing that later. We might all be doing that later. If everybody exits stage left.
Universalist left arm.
You?
Universalist years of the Harry Potter land.
Oh, are you going today?
Well, tomorrow morning at about
Cool.
So actually, when we Saturday, I'll be Universal. Because you're going to tell yourself with these things, to still be able to see.
I know.
So I can't see it basically, so I need to know by feel. Okay, so we're going to get started in a moment, so hustle and find a chair. Welcome to those who are gathering coffee. We need coffee, don't we? We need coffee when Ireland win a match. I discover. I think I found the most talented gentleman who can sing. So they came and stood outside my hotel window. All 400 of them, dancing in formation, singing until 4:30 in the morning. They had beautiful voices. And this is where I realised there are cultural differences across different cultures. So, welcome to the second day of the Living Knowledge Conference. I want you to wave at me. Did you have a good time yesterday? Did you have a good time? Oh, do you know, I had a brilliant time yesterday. It was really interesting hearing about some of the brilliant practices that are happening across Europe and the rest of the world. And I met quite a few of you, but I haven't met all of you yet. And one of Duncan, I work in the UK. I work with an organisation called the National Coordinating Centre for Public Engagement, because we like snappy titles, that means something. But and our centre works with universities across the UK to try and embed public engagement into their research. And so responsible research and innovation is something that's really important to us. And although we don't use the term so much in the UK, we do find that the practices that are under that umbrella term are really important to research. So today we're going to have a fun morning, I hope, fueled by coffee, very little sleep, and brains that are full of experiences of yesterday. I hope that you're going to be ready to join in a conversation about diversity and inclusion. And I don't know about you, but I find talking about diversity and inclusion a bit difficult. You find it difficult? because I sometimes don't quite know the terms I'm meant to be using. And I don't want to be offensive. And I want to connect with people from diverse backgrounds and experiences and lives, but sometimes I feel a bit constipated about how I can express that. So what I want to say to you is that we're going to have an attitude of forgiveness in this room today. If you've got a question or you want to say something, let's forgive one another when our language doesn't quite hit the mark. Because all of us are trying to think about how can we be more diverse and inclusive in our practice. And that's, I don't know, is that important to you? Is it important to you? But maybe you've never thought about it before. But wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great if we could be more diverse and inclusive in our practice? Because I believe great ideas are stimulated by difference, people working across difference. And Rajesh said to me this morning, he said, I was saying, like I am not on my own diverse. And he said, no, you're a monoculture. You are a monoculture. But look at this panel, we are now diverse between us, and it's in our together we can celebrate our diversity. And I was a gift, thank you, Rajesh. So, without more ado, it is my great pleasure to introduce 3 people who have been working together over the last 7 years to look at adaptive technologies. And they've been doing a fantastic project, and they're going to share their 3 perspectives on that project so that we can learn about how diversity and inclusion really affects and develops really effective practice. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Bernard, Siobhan and Pearl. And Pearl's going to kick us off and tell us all about the project. Thank you.
This is maybe not my presentation. Thank you, sorry.
Really affects and develops really effective practice. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Bernard, Siobhan and Pearl. And Pearl's going to kick us off.
Don't you be sorry.
Thank you.
Well, look, it takes 3 of us. You see, in our diversity, we find ways of working. Here.
Thank you, sorry.
How does it go?
Thank you, sorry.
Okay. But isn't that great? Teamwork in action. I'm sorry, Pearl.
No problem, thank you.
Sorry. Well, look, it takes 3 of us. You see, in our diversity, we find ways of working. Here.
Thank you, sorry.
How does it go?
Thank you, sorry.
Isn't that great? Teamwork in action. I'm sorry, Pearl.
No problem, thank you.
Why don't you introduce yourself to your neighbours? What does diversity mean to you?
It's just not showing up, so this is it. But it's not showing up on this one.
So all of what I do with Siobhan or Lucy.
So yeah, use full screen mode is how you usually view it, but it's just not showing up.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So,
Yeah.
this is like a website. I'll go back to the
Okay, let's come back together. What did you find out? What did you find out about what diversity means to one another? What did you find out? Can you hear me? Is my mic on? I'm such a foghorn leghorn, I can't tell the difference. Okay, what did you find out? Somebody shout out to me. What does diversity mean to you?
Thank you.
I'm going to ring the bell. Okay, no, together. What did you find out? What did you find out about what diversity means to What does diversity mean to you? Anybody? What did you find out? Are you all feeling shy? Did I tell you this is about forgiveness? goodness, can you hear me? What does diversity mean to you? I'm such a foghorn leghorn, I can't tell the difference. Different opinions, thank you. Would you shout it out to me? What does diversity mean to you? Different countries? I'm going to ring the bell. Brilliant. What did you find out about what diversity means? What does diversity mean? Yes, on the day of our referendum. Can I just reassure you? I have a proxy voter who I trust with my life to vote today for me. I am definitely part of that. Not part of the conversation, that's been a nonsense, but part of that vote. There are people who want Brexit. Thank you, Emma. Others. At the back. Are you asleep or awake? Awake? What does diversity mean to you? Can I reassure you? I have a proxy voter. Different stakeholders. Brilliant. I'm going to come to the front now. You thought you got away with it. What does diversity mean? Variation, class, gender, race. Brilliant. Okay, so after that little interlude, I'm going to do this again. We have three amazing people joining us, and they deserve a round of applause when I've finished my introduction. But it's with great delight I introduce Bernard, Siobhan, and Pearl. And Pearl's going to tell you about a fantastic collaborative project. Thank you, Pearl.
Thanks, Sophie. Thank you. So I'll jump right in because I'd say that's eating into my time. I'm Pearl, and today myself, Siobhan, and Bernard are going to speak about a doctorate project. I'm going to give you a little bit of background to the approach of the project, and then the three of us are going to speak about the challenges that we felt were salient. So I work in design, first of all, and design is often thought of as something concerned with the aesthetics of something, but actually design is about problem solving. It's about understanding needs and developing solutions to those needs. And product design is the area specifically that I work in. And although product design is about solving problems, participatory product design is about developing solutions directly with the people who are experiencing an issue or a problem. And through doing the participatory design research over the last few years, I learned a lot about it. But more recently, I found this architect's quote that I think sums it up really well. And it kind of reflects action research, participatory research, as well as participatory design. He said, participatory design is not some hippie romantic, let's all drink together about the future kind of thing, nor is it about trying to find the right answer with participants. It's actually about trying to find and identify with precision what's the right question, because answering the wrong question well is still wrong. So this project focused on assistive technology, and for those of you who don't know about assistive technology, that's basically any device often used by people with disabilities to enable better participation and independence. And the aim of this research was to explore a way to design adaptable assistive technology directly with the people who use it, and in doing so to address two key issues with it, which is high cost and abandonment of devices. And for those of you who don't know, three community partners were key and instrumental to the research: the Central Remedial Clinic, Enable Ireland, of which Siobhan is part of, and the Cedar Foundation in Northern Ireland. And as a vehicle and a kind of a way to explore a new design process, we looked at computer input devices. And in assistive technology terms, that's any device that's used by somebody to access a computer when a mouse and a keyboard isn't suitable. So it can be joysticks or switches or trackpads, that kind of thing. So for the project plan, there were two stages of research aiming towards three outputs. The first one was a Delphi study, which is a questionnaire-based study, and that involved service providers, occupational and physiotherapists, AT trainers, and clinicians. The next stage was a series of participatory design workshops with service users who had communication and motor impairments. For example, there was people with cerebral palsy and muscular dystrophy. And during those workshops, they shared experiences and stories, and they also interacted with tools that were devised specifically for the research. And through that, they gave me design findings that then could contribute to a prototype. So an example of one of those design findings was that users retrofit their existing computer input devices with other objects to make them easier to use. This lady used a cork because the texture and shape was better for her. The design findings then went towards creating a prototype shown on the left there, based on a mini keyboard, but because of the design, it can also be used as a joystick and a trackpad, and also because of the design, it can be used by people with high or low muscle tone, and it can also be put in the dishwasher, which was an important thing. So ultimately, a design framework came out of it as well, and that is there for the purpose of designing other types of adaptable assistive technology. As for the challenges that I faced, managing interdisciplinarity was a challenge. Merging easy, but what it ultimately meant was developing a way to really demonstrate how expectations and criticism in the field that was most important. So I think that's my time up. I'm going to pass you over to Bernard, who was one of my supervisors, who's going to talk about the challenges he felt were salient.
So this has changed a little bit, okay. Hi, my name is Bernard Simmons. I'm one of Pearl's supervisors, and really one of the key issues that we had was managing expectations. And managing expectations in terms of what Pearl was saying between kind of, say, the discipline of engineering and the discipline of, social science. And Pearl was in between. So when you're looking at how to best explain what Pearl was doing was, they say an input device, what kind of input device are you making? And so to dial it down in assistive technology input device, we were saying, oh, Pearl's going to make a switch. So then the engineer said, you're going to make a switch? And that's a PhD? Oh, sorry. They said, you're going to make a switch, and that's a PhD? So the expectations were, in terms of, say, academics, it's in terms of, say, people you're working with, in terms of people from the community. It was a number of different kind of expectations that kind of gave challenges to Pearl and to the supervisory group. And that's the nature that you'll find with, say, community-based interdisciplinary research. Is that you're going in between these spaces. And it's not just interdisciplinary, it's multidisciplinary because we're actually all learning together. It's not a space that's been walked before. It's not a kind of say a whole research theme within a university that's heavily backed by strong academics who've kind of walked this road before. You're walking this road alone, and that's probably down to Pearl's great work and great way of being able to explain what she was doing. It got international collaboration. We have research once Pearl won a national award and represented Ireland with her research. Created industrial collaboration. Also informed teaching because Pearl brought this into her teaching as a undergraduate. And with that, her students won awards as well. So it was really kind of championing a good strength in that area. And then we have a process of 2 external examiners. We have a kind of like an interim after 2 years, and then we have a final kind of viva examiner. And both of those people wanted to get involved in this research. So much so that you're looking at, say, Johns Hopkins University, Fulbright scholars, people who had millions in terms of funding, wanting to get into this research, trying to get products that really work with the And that's the experience, and that's kind of the skills that Pearl has obtained through this. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Bernard. I hope the microphone is working. I think it is the desk mic. I just want to talk very briefly from Enable Ireland's perspective of some of the strengths and the challenges of this project as well, which were really, it was a really exciting project for us, and we were delighted to have this opportunity. First of all, in terms of the strengths of this collaboration, well, there were a lot of them, so just distill them down to a few key ones. One was the fact that because of the collaboration, Enable Ireland, that included the people who used our services and who were the expert AT user advisors to Pearl, as well as the staff, learned a lot about universal design, a concept that we haven't been very familiar with up to that. It also really helped us to begin to build our research capacity. Our primary bread and butter is to deliver services frontline. So research is something that we do now and then. It's not embedded as a core to our essence, but an engagement of this nature that was so organic and so ongoing for a significant period of time really helped to strengthen that within Enable Ireland. And I would have to say, central to the strength, I suppose, of this collaboration was the valued contributions and participation of the expert AT users, and Pearl very much recognised their expertise and tapped into that in a way that was very much based on a parity of esteem, which was really very significant. Challenges, inevitably, in an engagement of this intensity and this duration and this seriousness, there were some. For myself, championing research across Enable Ireland to ensure that we could support ongoing engagement was really important and something that had to be done. Ensuring and fostering the engagement of both the people using our services and staff so that they would continue to be engaged for the elements of the project that they needed to be was really important. Supporting expert assistive technology users to participate. And that might be anything from simply encouraging them and ensuring that they were aware of the project to practical things like organising transport. So just really very practical supports for the expert AT users was really important. Exploiting the research findings. We've been really delighted with the work that Pearl has done. We want to see this brought to the next level now. We want to exploit the framework that Pearl has worked so hard to develop in partnership with expert AT users to bring it to the next stage and hopefully inform future product development. We also want to, I suppose, foster that kind of capacity that's been built across a cohort of expert AT users so that they can engage independently of us or in partnership with us on other projects into the future. So there's a kind of a jigsaw there of challenges, but none of them are insurmountable in any way. They're simply things that we are very aware of that we want to work on to build on this great foundation that we've experienced through Pearl's PhD. Thank you.
So, I don't know about you, but I'm curious. I'm curious about how you manage those jigsaw of challenges. I love to hear that they're not insurmountable, and I think one of the things right at the end, that we work in changing universities, but when community-based organisations are working with universities, they're championing research within their own context and have their own battles. So joining together on those battles is really important. So you've got a couple of minutes on your tables. Any of those challenges resonate with you? Any comment or question you'd like to make to our panellists? We're going to have a very short time for that. So 2 minutes on your tables. Anything resonates with you in your practice, we'll come back together and take a couple of comments or questions.
It's very interesting point of view about managing expectations because, as you said, fascinating thing you said again, multiple experts no single vertical authority of expertise.
Yes.
So,
And I think that's why that was
January.
And there's no one's honest. So we're lucky. We got a good research team together, and it's kind of huge roles. And then we had to prove ourselves, and that's why we have 20 publications. Yeah. But if we weren't under scrutiny, we wouldn't have such academic rigor.
I know that I need to do it.
Our research on the process concerns and problems, multidisciplinary research. So we started to research. So it's that kind of way.
Because obviously I'm not in the college anymore. It is just another project, but I absolutely enjoy it. Like I have definitely lost the momentum. Yeah.
The student confidence in believing in themselves, and then standing up at any reviews, and you have great technical engineering, and standing between these different people and get heard for. You know, so it's talking cheese. So you know what I mean? And people be like, but after the first year, it changed. Once Pearl had put in work
That's your 2 minutes. That's your 2 minutes, I'm sorry. 2 minutes is as 2 minutes does. I'm sorry to cut your conversation short, but these are conversations that have plenty of space to grow within coffee breaks and lunchtime, so don't lose sight of the things that you're talking about. Now, we've just got time now just for a couple of comments or questions, and this is going to be on a first-serve, first-terms basis, so you need to get your hand up quickly. That's all I'm saying. Who wants to go? Oh, brilliant. I've got a lady there, and I've got a gentleman here. Brilliant.
Oh, good Lord. Thank you very much for sharing. Pearl, clearly you had supervisor support, but what supports did you have from peers or within while you were doing your research throughout?
So yeah, there wasn't an assistive technology research group in the College of Engineering and the Built Environment. There was one in the College of Electronic Engineering, but actually I wasn't part of it. So it was something that we navigated ourselves. Luckily, I also had a supervisor from Trinity College in the School of Midwifery and Nursing. So she was really important in guiding me through this social science kind of approach that I wasn't previously familiar with. And so yeah, the support came from a diverse supervisory team more than peers. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to learn more about your collaboration with the industry.
You want to know more about the collaboration with industry?
Yes.
Yeah. Who would like to take that?
Well, I suppose what would have happened is the collaboration from industry. Oh, hi. So, well, really, what the collaboration from industry would really have, from my point of view, would have kind of started with Enable Ireland was that how this kind of process started was we were kind of presenting outputs from our students of other collaborations that we have, and what happened was these were people who were funding, say, Enable Ireland. These were people who were funding Enable Ireland, and so once they heard our story and what we wanted to do, they started saying, "All right, we'll write you letter supports. Anything you need, come to us. We'll help you." So what I did was I applied for Research Council funding, and as a backup, I was going to use these corporate companies to fund this research. And what actually turned out was we got the Research Council funding, and so we then went that way. But we had to support the whole time of these of corporate companies, but we didn't fully engage with them really until we probably had. Would have been too much on the student to talk to a company before you'd even come up with an idea yet. So, and at this stage now would be the time to kind of talk to these companies. But now what's happening is that Pearl's in great demand. I think she has 2 jobs at the moment that she's balancing around. So her life is kind of going up very fast. And so that's why we need to be able to run with this. Is what Siobhan is saying, is that we have corporate backing and we have a beautiful framework and beautiful work done, and it's now to kind of bring this stuff and use it and tie these things together. Does that help?
So Siobhan, so Enable Ireland already had that relationship with those companies, and how did that happen?
It's an unusual situation in that we've had a partnership with Microsoft since 2001, and we actually we deliver training programs on site in Microsoft. So they've been very supportive of all of the assistive technology training program activities that we've been engaging in. And we've also forged a partnership with Lecky, which is a Northern Irish company which develops postural support devices and mobility devices for mostly children with disabilities. So Lecky have been on board and sponsoring another project that we're working on together for the last number of years. So there's quite an openness actually we found among the corporates, I suppose, and I suppose specifically companies in the disability sector, because they're looking for new ideas and they really like the way that they're seeing the model of engagement that we've been forging together.
Great, brilliant, thank you. So there'll be a bit of a chance to talk more about the case study after a brief intermission with me and Rajesh. So we'll just give another round of applause to our presenters, please. So I spoke earlier of friends you haven't yet met. I met Bernard, Siobhan and Pearl yesterday, and I was really immediately connected well with them and thought, this is the kind of work I really believe in and I care about. Rajesh, on the other hand, I've known for a number of years now. And Rajesh Tandon, he runs Priya in India, but he also is a UNESCO chair for community-based research with his colleague Bud Hall. And some of you may know of their work. It's been a really helpful convening point for conversations like the conversations that are inhabit the Living Knowledge Conference. And Rajesh got some great news yesterday. And so he hasn't already told you. I'm going to not let him tell you. I'm going to tell you. But his UNESCO chair with Bud Hall has been renewed for another 4 years. So hopefully that means he's got some really interesting things to say to us about diversity and inclusion. Rajesh.
Thank you, Sophie. Good morning to you all. It's a pleasure to be in the company of colleagues from Living Knowledge Network and hear about the renewal of UNESCO chair yesterday afternoon. So I'm delighted to have this news in the presence of fellow travelers, and thank you for the support that Living Knowledge Network has provided to our work over these years. Yesterday and day before, I participated in learning more about RRI. I had read about it earlier in conversations with colleagues like Hank. We had understood some parts of it. But day before, in the Enrich project presentations, I picked up a bit more understanding of what is happening under the framework of RRI. And then Jacqueline Brewer's presentation yesterday morning was very insightful, very helpful in understanding. So as I began to think about what to talk about in terms of diversity and inclusion, I got very worried, because sometimes when you understand more, you get worried. There is a saying, ignorance is bliss. And I was blissful till yesterday. I'm a bit worried today. And I want to share with you my worry. The more I understand about RRI, my worry is that this is not just a new way of doing business. It has the potential of being transformative in the way we understand science, in the way we understand research, in the way we understand knowledge, its use in societal context, both for personal and social well-being. So my worry is that if RRI is really implemented, it could be very subversive. It could be very subversive to science, to scientists, and to scientific enterprise. And if I am worried because it has the potential to be subversive, then I'm also worried that others may have figured it out and may want to stop its potential to be realized. And as Jacqueline said yesterday, we may just be noticing tick boxing as opposed to real grappling with the meaning of RRI. So in the framework of RRI, diversity is mentioned as a process. But in my understanding, diversity is a value. It's not a process. It's not means to some end. It is a valuable end in itself. And the most significant part of that diversity in relation to RRI as a value is to acknowledge that there are diverse modes of knowledge production, there are diverse forms of expression of knowledge, and that there are diverse knowledge cultures. It is fascinating to hear about this case study, and I was asking Bernard that his statement a few minutes ago said there were no experts. We were managing expectation across experts because the users and the community was as much an expert as the PhD student and the professor. Now this realization, this acknowledgement publicly is the most significant part of acknowledging diversity. We have in our history, recent history, learned about how new ways of knowing are gaining certain respectability. We have talked about indigenous knowledge, we have talked about indigenous ways of knowing, cognitive processes by which traditionally knowledge seemed to be produced is not the totality of modes of knowledge production. Knowledge is also produced through action. The entire discipline of action research is based on that assumption that by acting you produce knowledge, and knowledge is also produced by feeling. So knowledge production is not a matter of head alone. It is a matter of your heart, it's a matter of your hands and legs and motor functions. Now this is a fairly different view from the way science has evolved and understanding of science has evolved and teaching and training of scientists has evolved. It has therefore questions about a monoculture of knowledge that needs to be challenged through a multicultural, multimolar and multimodal approach to knowledge and knowledge production. So for me, diversity in RRI framework is not a process. It is a value. It's a perspective. It's a normative position. Only when Pearl, Bernard and Chauvin accepted that there were multiple experts, only then the design process could move forward. That acceptance is the starting point for believing in diversity. Several of you are aware of, many of you are aware of in your own life, how sites of knowledge production are no longer limited to research institutions or academia or universities. You are also familiar with the fact that forest departments and agricultural scientists overruled the knowledge of forest dwellers and farmers. They planted monocultures of trees and species. They used pesticide and fertilizer to increase soil fertility. 20, 30, 40 years later, the state of that soil and the nature of those forests is depleted. The local knowledge that was available, which had evolved in practice over centuries, was ignored. My grandmother used to worship a Indian basil leaf plant which was sitting inside the house, and all of us as kids were expected to go there and light a candle and hold a prayer. And I used to think that my grandmother is semi-literate, she is ignorant, superstitious, stupid, making us do all this. 40 years later, we learned that tulsi leaf, the basil leaf, is one of the most important sources of health and well-being. And now we have tea made out of tulsi, and we have face masks made out of tulsi. So how come her knowledge was delegitimized earlier? In fact, it almost implied that this was voodoo science, and I was being trained in proper science. This is what I understand is the potential of diversity in RRI framework, and therefore, as you can imagine, fairly subversive. Let me now come to the second element of that conversation, diversity and inclusion. We think that inclusion as a process key would mean that we will invite community people, we'll invite the users, we'll invite people on the street, we will invite all kinds of folks, and we call them stakeholders. Inclusion is not by invitation. In order to include, we must understand systemic and entrenched nature of exclusion. Unless we understand how exclusion has taken place, who are excluded from the process of knowledge production, whose voice is excluded, and why it has been excluded. We cannot bring that voice by simply sending them a letter of invitation saying, we want to include you in our research project. We have to create conditions. We have to create conditions under which that voice can speak out on its own. Only then inclusion will happen. Otherwise, inclusion will remain a means to achieve a certain end and not an important value in itself. If you can imagine that whose voices have been systematically excluded in production of knowledge, in defining what is knowledge, then in each specific context, we can make efforts to create conditions such that those voices can feel confident, become vocal, and our ears are sensitized to hear them. Many a times voices speak out, but our ears are blocked. Imagine those blocking machines that were given yesterday, not to block out the pubs, but we have blocked out voices of exclusion because systemic entrenched exclusion in different parts of our society. I want to give you only one example of exclusion, which perhaps is universal, and that has to do with gender. It is one of the other keys I understood from RRI framework. But gender, for me, is not about counting how many women are sitting on the podium. Are their numbers equal to number of men? Do they occupy all the right positions? In RRI framework, inclusion of gender would entail engendering institutions of science, engendering knowledge production, bringing epistemology of gender, bringing women's ways of knowing and learning in the center of the process of knowledge production. Unless we look at gender from that lens, we will only treat it as a tick box, as Jacqueline said yesterday. So friends, if you are also worried, as I am, about the subversive potential of RRI framework, by looking at the issue of diversity and inclusion, then I think we have to ask ourselves, are we ready to deal with that potential in our own work and in our own institutions? Thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh, and we'll be able to respond to some of Rajesh's challenges in a moment, but first, a brief interlude. So I'm going to ask you to think about what Rajesh said about our head, our heart and our hands. And we had the privilege of working with colleagues in Canada who use this to help think about how to make an authentic partnership. So head, what you know. You might not be able to explain what you know, but what you know, what's your expertise, what's your knowledge? Your heart, how do you emotionally connect? What are you passionate about? What do you care about? What matters to you? And your hands, what do you do? How do you partner? How do you work? So indulge me. Now, this is not, I've been told not to do this, it is not a chance to go to sleep, but I'd like you to close your eyes and stay awake. Close your eyes. And I'd like you to think about a partnership that you're involved in. Any partnership you're involved in, preferably work-related, but whatever. Think of that partnership. Who is it you're partnering? Why do you partner them rather than someone else? Think about how that partnership connects with your head, your knowledge, your expertise, their knowledge, their expertise. How does it connect to your heart, to your passions, what you care about, your emotional energy? How does it affect what you do together, your hands? How does it affect your working and your practice? To what extent, which one's most important? Your head, your hands, your heart? Which is most important in that partnership to you? And how important is it for you to develop more diverse practice with your partners? How important is it? And when you're ready, if you open your eyes. And I have been asked also to talk, and I'm the chair, so that's a bit awkward, in that I time the other speakers, but I'm just going to waffle on forever, because I'm the chair. Who's going to stop me? No, so I just want to reassure you, I have someone here who is going to stop me. But I have been privileged to ask to talk about diversity and inclusion and what we're learning in the UK about how diverse practices are being enacted through engaged research, through community university partnerships and others. And I just want to start by saying I'm totally committed to diverse and inclusive practice. And like Rajesh, I think it is a value. It's a value I hold dear. And I also think that we ought to try and work with people who aren't like us. And I think that that's where true richness lies. But I also think working with people who aren't quite like you is difficult. It is difficult. And we can pretend it isn't, and we can pretend it's all marvellous, but it's difficult because it takes us out of our comfort zones. It exposes our vulnerability and our weakness, and often our ignorance. Working with difference is difficult. And if we're not comfortable sitting with that difficulty, then we're not going to do it, are we? Because I don't know about you, but most of us want our work life to be quite comfortable. And we don't go, oh, look, here's a really uncomfortable thing. I'll come and do this for 5 years. Actually, I'm doing some nice work over here with some comfortable partnerships, and it's all going well, and we're doing really well. Do I want to step outside of that? And you might say, well, why should you? Well, you might want to do it because your value is diversity. That's why you might want to do it. But some of the people that we work with maybe aren't convinced by that. I know, do you make this challenge? I want to do diverse practice. I have to make that capture somebody's imagination. So I thought, let's draw on some inspiring thinking from outside of our community, of people who come to Living Knowledge, people who come to our Engage conference. Outside of this community, what kind of thinking's happening that can help? And I looked first to the business world, and I thought, one of the big challenges is that higher education is not a very diverse environment. Now you might be at a university that's incredibly diverse. I don't see that so much in the UK. We don't have incredible diversity within our institutions. And I don't know, you may not represent a university here today, but what about the diversity in your community group? How diverse is it? And have you thought about how diverse that is? And I think that we struggle with that. We struggle to embrace diverse ways of thinking, of knowing and doing within institutions. So I looked at the business world, and apparently 2006, I read this on the internet, so please, 2016 is going to be for businesses all about inclusive and diverse talent practice within business. And apparently there was a big 2-year study looking at the practices of talent management in businesses. And what that study found was that for the practices that include things that address diversity and inclusion, those that do those things well in terms of gender are 15% more likely to be successful than those that don't. That's quite impressive, isn't it? And then those that have really thoughtful and inclusive practices around diversity are 35% more likely. And I have a quote, and I don't like notes. Anyone who knows me, I hate notes. So I have to think really hard before I do a presentation, but I have to read this because I couldn't learn it. So a guy called Cedric Herring from the University of Chicago, is he in the room? Is he in the room? Good. Just checking. This is a direct quote, I understand, but you never know. Okay, he said, this is about business. Diversity yields superior outcomes over homogeneity because progress and innovation depends less on lone thinkers with high intelligence than on diverse groups working together and capitalising on their individuality. Diverse groups working together and capitalising on their individuality. I think that's your project. Sorry, am I allowed to say that? Does that make you feel uncomfortable? I think that that's your project. And I think that apparently the business world is really hot on this. So universities are businesses, that's what I'm going to be telling them. You want to be really successful as an organisation, we need to revolutionise our practice, to have more ways of knowing and doing and thinking and sharing and creating knowledge. So that's my first point. My second point is another lens. And let's be honest, diversity and inclusion, we could be here all day and we wouldn't even turn over one of the stones that we need to look under to find out how we can do it better. But I wanted to share a bit of work by an organisation called Cultural Dynamics. And Cultural Dynamics, every 6 years, do a survey of what British people value. And what they look at is how do those values cluster? How do those values cluster? And they divide the population into three main groups of people who have similar values. So one of those groups are people who really love community. They love family. They like thinking that there's a real difference between right and wrong, and if you do something wrong, you should be punished for it. That's that group. That's what they believe. That's what they care about. That's their worldview. And then there's another group who are apparently more aesthetically driven. They believe that there's a higher good that they're serving, and they often are really, really valuing social justice or caring for the environment. And then there's another group who are really thoughtful about really wanting to get themselves known. They want to be famous, or they want people to know who they are. And they tend to particularly like new gadgets, new things, and often like material wealth. They hold that up quite highly. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh, people value, or you might be sitting there thinking, one of those value sets sat with me comfortably, and the others felt a bit uncomfortable. Did anyone feel like that? Was there one that kind of resonated and the other couple were a bit weird? Some of you are nodding. It looks like the people who know me are nodding because they know I'm nervous. How about the people who don't know me? Did anyone resonate? Did anyone resonate? And what I find interesting, this was a study. I'm not saying it's the holy grail of all knowledge about what British people value. It's clearly more sophisticated than that. But I think what's interesting is that the study looked at, people who tend to work in the charity sector tend to be really driven by social justice. And the ways they communicate and how the language they use speaks to other people who care about social justice. So if I cared about social justice, I might say to you, do you not realise how we are abusing the planet? Don't you want to give a good world to our children, don't you? And people who value that will go, yes, yes, I do. And the people who don't value that will be, oh my goodness, who is this woman? I don't care about that. I don't care about that. I want to do something different. And so what we need to do is, if we're wanting to think about diversity, is think about how do we communicate across those value differences? How do we communicate across them? It's hard. Now, in the UK, DEFRA, the Department of Environment, Farming and Rural Affairs, wanted to try and encourage everybody to take biodiversity measures. They wanted us to stop filling our kettle to the top and boiling it and not having a cup of tea. You know, they wanted us to share lifts into work, or better still, to walk or cycle. And they wanted people to do that, and they created a campaign that spoke to the people who cared about social justice and the environment. And the people who cared about social justice and the environment thought it was a very good campaign. And then 2/3 of the population thought it was really irrelevant. And so what they did was they began to say, what will incentivise these kinds of behaviours that actually matter to our world in groups with different value sets? And they found that sometimes rewards and competitions motivate people. Sometimes really high tech, the new tech, you know, like the new hybrid car, that motivates people. And so they found a whole new sophisticated way of campaigning for the very changes that they say are critical to the planet by speaking to different value sets. And it is my conjecture that, I don't know if this is helpful, I don't know if this is helpful to your thinking, but it's helpful, I think, in terms of thinking, I want to work across difference, but it's not just difference in terms of what we look like, it's difference in terms of what we value. And we need to get much smarter about how we do that in order to build the kind of responsible research and innovation that Jacqueline was talking about yesterday. And amazingly, I have 2 minutes left to do one tiny thing, so I want you to close your eyes again, because like, you can get too much of a good thing looking at me. Close your eyes again. And I want you to think back to that partnership and think, how can I use my valuing of diversity, this work that I'm inhabiting, where maybe diversity is a value for me, how can I use that to influence change where I am? Jacqueline talked about top-down stuff, and she talked about bottom-up stuff. Things that happen. We are change agents. It is without doubt we are change agents in our own situations. How can you shine a light into your organisation to help them to see that diversity leads to new ways of thinking, new ways of knowing, and new ways of doing? How can you do that? Because actually, it's up to us to do that. No one else is going to do it for us. And so, I'm hoping that when you go back into your work, you'll be able to begin to make those points of connection and say, do you know what? This is worth fighting for. This is worth fighting for. Thank you. Okay. This feels really weird. I'm back being chair again now. Which is great, because it means if you ask any tough questions that are meant to be for me, I can go, oh, panel. So, we've hardly got any time at all. We have about 8 minutes. Any questions for Rajesh, for our case study leaders, and if you must, for me. Again, it's a first come, first served basis. I'm sorry, it's the only way I know how to work in this environment. So get your hand up quickly if you want to make a comment. Brilliant, thank you. Was there someone with a hand up over there? I couldn't see. Actually, to be honest, the people at the back, I can't see you at all, because I always forget my glasses. But so you have to maybe stand up if you want to speak at the back. Okay, I'm coming here first.
Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Maku Eda from Rutgers University. I had a question about inclusion in terms of progress, right? I'm always thinking, especially when you're dealing with complex issues, as we are all dealing with, and you are working in a very multi-sector kind of process to address this social issue. Do you see that when we talk about inclusion, not to, I guess, be a devil's advocate in this work, are there phases in which we include various stakeholders in this work? Or is that just kind of a way of saying, no, we're not ready to hear this group of individuals yet, let's let's get to them when we're ready to have a different type of conversation when it comes to progress, or just moving an agenda or a goal forward. Because I struggle with this process, and it's a real process when you're kind of thinking about it. So I'm just kind of throwing that out there. How do we really define, can inclusion, and I think I know how we're defining it here, but when you're thinking about really multiple stakeholders coming to the table to address a certain issue, how do you have that conversation clearly without getting, with showing progress in your work and moving forward?
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to hold that question. I'm hoping that you're thinking about that question. And I'm going to go to, oh yeah, brilliant, thank you.
Hello, Henk Mulder, University of Groningen. Also a question to Rajesh. You said that the scientists see inclusion and diversity in RI as subversive, but would there be any values that we do share that we could address so they might be able to see the value of inclusiveness and diversity, maybe like the quotes that Sophie mentioned? So how can we reach the values they do share with us?
Okay, great. And I had one more question down here. Yep. So I hope you I will try and summarize the questions, but I have an awful habit of forgetting the first one by the time we get to the third. But I'll do my best. Okay, brilliant.
Hi, my question is to Rajesh. It's also partly, I think, more of a comment. But I thank him for usefully linking the notion of inclusion to the issue of, or the question of exclusion. Because it seems to me if we don't do that, there's a real danger that focusing only on inclusion can result in an assimilationist or adaptive approach to the way in which we engage with different agents. But if the focus or the starting point is on analysing exclusion, then hopefully that links us to, or encourages us to look at issues of power and issues of social relations. And then perhaps inclusion is not what we're talking about. What we're actually wanting to talk about is a complete different way of doing something which links to the notion of subversion. So one of the things that was striking, going through my head while I was listening to you, is the extent to which the international student movement around decolonization is something that we could all perhaps be linking up with, as they also challenge current forms of knowledge. Thank you.
Okay, so three slightly related but different questions. One on process and inclusion through process and who we're leaving out of that, and how we have the conversation with groups of stakeholders. And I'm going to ask somebody from the Adaptive Technologies Project. Would one of you be comfortable talking about that? Because I think that you went through a process in partnership. So what do you think? Can I? Oh, brilliant.
Briefly to it.
Thank you, Siobhan.
Thanks, Sophie. I suppose just very simplistically in a way, but as a community partner, I really do value the early inclusion. I think, what Pearl talked about when she quoted that architect about knowing what the problems are that need to be addressed rather than answering a specific question, that process can only happen if partners are involved from the very earliest of stages. So my own experience has been fairly haphazard, but in the best possible sense of that, because we didn't really know quite what it was that we were answering, what the particular questions were that we were answering. We learned what those were through the collaborative process. So I just think early inclusion, and I think yesterday I heard a lot of really good stuff around networks, many of which I was unaware of, and I think it would be fantastic to be, speaking as a community partner, for us to be more engaged in those networks too, so that we get that macro perspective on how this type of partnership and collaboration can work as a process. So the earlier the better, I guess.
Thank you, Siobhan.
And I guess I'd just add that although we had 2 stages, I think coming to a different group of stakeholders with fresh eyes each time is important. So you're not carrying one group's perspective into the next group. You kind of have to take a step back at each stage. So the series or the order of who you're involving becomes less important then. And of course, if you can do a cycle, it's going to be better. If you can speak to different groups at the beginning with that beginner's mindset, kind of analyse or go through a process with them if possible, and then go back again with a synthesis of all of the different groups' perspectives and speak again to the different groups. That's obviously kind of the ideal or one way of doing it.
Great, thank you. And Rajesh, we had two questions. One about how we can reach the different values that maybe some of the scientists hold and how we can talk across those, I think. And then the other about the words that you said about exclusion, and also if and how linking to the decolonization of the university movement with students might help the cause of RRI. Are the people who ask questions happy with my summary? Yeah, okay, Rajesh.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah? I think this works.
It does work.
Oh, great. Thanks a lot for those comments and reflections. I think by articulating a framework of epistemological diversity, it does not mean we can get there overnight. We have to start where we stand. The next step can only be taken from where we stand. Otherwise, we'll fall on our face if we try to take the next step outside. So, what is the next step? You know, in our conversations, we talk about co-construction of knowledge. We have heard about it in Enrich project and many things we do together. If you look at the case study which was presented here, they took a lot of time in discovering the research question before they began to even think about answering it, right? Now, why did they take a lot of time? Because when you, in a traditional mode of doing research, we approach people's lives through our disciplinary lens. In exploring a research question for co-construction, you interrogate disciplines from people's lives. You put it on its head. And that takes a while. That takes a while for Bernard to unlearn a bit of his engineering, and it takes Shobhan to say, well, I have something to contribute to this. So I think the point that you were raising and was answered, we assume that by calling people stakeholders, they will demonstrate their stakes. Stakeholderness is learned in the process of working together. Stakeholders are not born. Our concepts and analysis can say you are a stakeholder, but you don't feel having any stake at all. So how do we create that process? So I think a lot of time, if it is applied to framing the research questions from the points of views of various actors around the table, then that will help as a first step to accept diversity. On the question of exclusion and inclusion, I think it's important to, these concepts have gained a life of their own. But we have to ask ourselves why I was calling my grandmother superstitious. I have to ask that question of myself. I have to ask why I was taught to be objective in producing my knowledge, and any interference from anybody, I was told, is contamination. That is my research training, that you avoid contamination. As a natural scientist, I learned the phrase, when temperature and pressure are kept constant, then. In real world, neither temperature is constant nor pressure is constant. Your temperature is always high and your pressure is going up. So, those kinds of
tautologies we have acquired and they are in our blood as scientists, as researchers. So we need to clean up, cleansing our blood. And we need to change our lens and say contamination is okay. And that people asking questions or making contributions towards how to collect data or how to analyze data is okay. It does not disturb the quality of knowledge production. I think the outputs that this research produced is a testimony to the fact that it advanced knowledge, it improved the lives of people, and it made a contribution to larger social change. What better can we ask for? What better can we ask for? So I think it is important to, in our approach to these ideas in practice, begin to question and unlearn some of the things we have been taught. And therefore, as Enrich Project has been doing, ask what are the implications of this approach to the teaching of next generation of researchers and scientists, to the curriculum in which they are taught. Because we are not born as scientists. What is the implication of this to the traditional notion of intellectual and manual labor? Because if you are doing manual labor, anyway you have nothing important to contribute to ideas. So those kinds of things we have grown up with in our own training as researchers and scientists, and we need to unpack them and unlearn them in the context of the RRI framework. Otherwise, as Jacqueline said, we will be picking it up and acquiring more funding from Horizon 2020.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rajesh. So that brings us to a close of this part of the plenary. I want to thank all of our speakers, Pearl, Siobhan, Bernard. Oh, I'm so sorry. I always do that when I'm nervous. I'm sorry, Bernard and Rajesh. And thank you for participating with us. And I'm going to hand over to Catherine Bates, but one last round of applause for our speakers, please.
We're just reviving the computer, a little bit of CPR here. So,
we're just trying to work out the computer technicalities.
Can we go?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're just, Christine is coming to the rescue yet again, as the computer seems to have died. That was just a fantastic, a fantastic session in terms of, we had such a great time dancing last night, and I'm sure a lot of people this morning were feeling a little bit like, do I have the energy for a whole session? And I think certainly that session has provided the little energy pep that everybody was looking for. So thank you so much to all the people, and for Sophie for facilitating. So the Enrich project, which, as you know, the conference is being organised under the umbrella of and also funded by, has an advisory board, which I think those of you who were here yesterday morning will have seen those people stand up. So you have seen some of the people, and on that advisory board we have members of a whole range of different networks. And what we thought might be nice, just to finish this morning's session, I'm sorry, I can't multitask. It's not something I'm good at, so I'll just find the slides here. So what we thought was that it might be nice to ask some of the advisory board members who are on different, or who represent different networks, to come up and say just a couple of words about the different networks. These networks all support RRI related activities. And so we've asked just 3 of them. We could have asked more, but we felt, we'd just give you a taster. And so the first person we'd like to introduce is Norbert Steinhaus, who's from the Bond Science Shop, who's going to briefly introduce the Living Knowledge Network, which is based in Europe.
Yes, thank you, Catherine. Thank you for, does it work this way? Giving me the floor here to introduce the Living Knowledge Network, which now I think exists for about 15 years. It's an open network. It's a network of science shops and science shop related organizations doing a lot of work on the edge of civil society research relations. And so at first I would like to thank you, Catherine, and the whole team of DIT and all the helping hands behind making this conference possible. It's a fantastic conference. I really love it. It's the 7th conference we have from the Living Knowledge Networks, and we were always discussing different issues of what, how, and why we are doing this, and we are challenging people. We are challenging ourselves in this network. We are challenging higher education institutes to move forward with their work. We're challenging policymakers. And we do that to come to a change, and change is possible, and we've seen that throughout the last years. And this is what is really amazing for me from that network, that we can work with an open structure, without strong and fixed regulations of cooperation. We are working on commitment, we are working on the same topics, and we are open for everybody who shares the idea of the network. So there are about 60 science shops. I just have to mention a number. I do not even really know how much we are cooperating in these networks. There are people working for a long time together, and we are sharing our information, we are sharing our expertise, we are developing new ideas together, and I can only ask you to join us in this cooperation, and you already did by attending this conference. As I said, we are working for the change, we are challenging ourselves, change can happen, and I found a nice quote by Harold Wilson, which might be a bit tricky today with the decision about the Brexit. He once said, in 1967 to the Consultative Assembly of the European Council, that the only human institution that rejects change is a cemetery. So if there's a way to make things better, so we have to go out, we have to find these ways, and I would like to say enjoy the conference, share, learn, and have fun here. But before I leave the floor here, there's one more thing I want to say. We have somebody whose birthday today here, and I would like to thank Emma for all the work she has put into this consortium of Enrich and into the work in the Living Knowledge Network from the very beginning on. And I want all of you to sing for Emma now a happy birthday song. So I stand on the micro. I'm not the best singer, but I will start. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Emma. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you very much, Norbert. Happy birthday, Emma. So next we would like to introduce Eileen Tan, who is from the University Science Malaysia on behalf of the Asia Pacific University Community Engagement Network, also known as APUCEN, which is based in Asia Pacific.
Thank you, Emma. Good morning to all of you. I'm getting nervous. Okay, this is actually our very first time, because I think Living Knowledge, even though this is the 7th conference, but it seems that it's very new to us in the East. And I'm very happy that I've been given the opportunity to represent APUCEN, to be here and introduce what is APUCEN. Basically, APUSEN stands for Asia Pacific University Community Engagement Network. We were officially launched in year 2011. So basically, we are actually new kids on the block. We are still in the learning process. APUSEN comprises of members from higher learning institutions, NGOs, other networks, and also we are now opening our membership to corporate members because we feel that after 2 or 3 years running APUSEN, we faced with financial constraint to sustain the activities, to help the partners we have, and that's why we are opening our doors to corporate members so we can actually help them to do their CSR. We join hands to address local and regional issues and problems with approaches or solutions that better suit the local original cultures and value. Like what Dr. Rajesh has said, local wisdom is very much encouraged through APUSEN network. APUSEN draws on the expertise and resources from Asia Pacific higher learning institutions. These multidisciplinary experts will help APUSEN foster the culture of university community engagement in a proactive, inclusive, holistic, and participatory way. Currently, APUSEN has 83 members from 19 countries, and our members are now beyond Asia Pacific region. I would like to take this opportunity to actually to invite any of you who would like to extend your expertise and knowledge and share with us in the Asia Pacific regions. Please do contact the Secretariat. We are based in Malaysia, and I would like to join hands with all of you and learn things about RRI. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Eileen. And thirdly, we'd like to introduce Nadia Gmelch from the Catalan Association of Public Universities, and she's going to introduce you to the Global University Network for Innovation, which is known as GUNI.
Thank you for giving us this short moment to present the network. GUNI stands for Global University Network for Innovation. So we also have the word innovation in our network, like RRI and in many other places. How do we understand innovation? Innovation, we try to work on issues of the higher education world, challenges and topics that probably not too many associations, not in this field, but in this conference, but like at global level might not put attention to. So we try to raise awareness of all these issues of social relevance. GUNI was created in 1999 by UNESCO, the United Nations University, and the Polytechnic University in Catalonia. And since 2014, it has been moved from the Polytechnic University to the ACUP, the Catalan Association of Public Universities, which is like the Rectors Conference and represents the 8 universities, public universities in Catalonia. UPC is one of them. GUNI has about more than 200 members from 78 countries of the world. Like we heard yesterday, the major of Dublin, she was very fascinated that the Living Knowledge Network is free. So the GUNI network is also free. So if you want to participate, there's no member fee. And many of the members are universities, UNESCO chairs, and also individual persons interested in these kind of issues. What we normally do is we produce the so-called GUNI report, the Higher Education in the World report, which is focused in the last years. It's every 2 years that we produce one. And I think many of you have been involved in some of the editions. There's been one on sustainability, for example, and the last one was on community engagement. So this is where many of you wrote articles and boxes of best practices. And we're currently working on the 6th edition, which is going to be on the local university. the role of universities in responding to the local and global challenges they're facing. Regis is still here with us, and Bud Hall, they both form part of the editorial team. And also Ellen Hazelcorn, which many of you might know because I think she's from close related to this institution. It's gonna be ready by the end of the year, so you can have a look at our web and you will be informed about it. And why are we here? Because we form part, as has been said, of the advisory board of the Enrich project. But we also work in the sister project, the HARI project, which has been funded in the same call for proposals from the European Commission. I have a flyer here, so you can identify the image. And I'm here with my colleague Nuria Saladier, if you can raise your hand, from Pompeu Fabra University, who is the leader of the HARI project. So yeah, we're here to work together, learning very much these last days. And yeah, thanks again. Enjoy the rest of the conference and see you around.
So we just want to thank our network representatives and advisory board members for those introductions and welcomes. And please do consider getting involved in your local network. That was the whole point of the input here today. I just want to make an announcement as well about the poster session for this afternoon. First of all, just to let you know, if you could come straight back over to Kevin Street after the post-lunch parallel session. So that'll be at 3:30 in the afternoon, that session finishes. And if you can come straight back over here for the posters, please, we'd really appreciate it. And we'll be running around with a bell and with our purple sashes and trying to herd you over anyway. But and the posters are all in one big room in the basement. It's B16 and it's just below where we are, just near where the gents and ladies' bathrooms are on the left-hand side. And what will also be there, just as an encouragement to make sure you do come over, we'll have drinks and canapes and ice cream also served. And the weather might be obliging today. And the drinks, some of them may have bubbles in them as well, so another incentive. And we're going to start with brief, just from the point of view of where you go first. The posters are in room B16, but first of all, you can get a brief introduction on one of the strands in a separate room, and that's listed on the programme, so I'll point that out to you in a minute. So there'll be a brief presentation by the poster presenters. They're broken into small rooms. There are 7 rooms in total. And those presentations will take no more than 10 minutes. But obviously it's important that you get over in time to go to that room to hear the input from whichever group of presenters you'd like to hear from. And then you can go to the main room and view the posters there. And once you get to the main room, that's where the refreshments will be. But we'll be watching. You can't get in there until you've gone to the initial input. So everybody can network there. We're really looking forward to this event. We really want to make sure as many people attend as possible. The other thing you can do while you're there is vote for the best poster. So there's another type of vote going on today. And you'll be able to vote. Everybody gets to vote for the best poster. Now there's just one other aspect from the point of view of the posters that will be on show or that will be presented. For some reason, and we really must apologise, the posters that are listed, there's one at the end that's missing. So there should be a room 7 on the list, but it's not there. It got chopped off at the end. So it was unlucky number 7 for some reason this time. Sorry about that. We're really apologetic to the 3 people who should have been listed. Now it is listed on the online programme. So if you have that downloaded or if you can access it through Wi-Fi, it's there. But we've also printed it out for you outside. So there's a 1-page that you can pick up outside on the registration desk before you leave that includes that last list of the extra 3 posters that should have been there. So once again, we just apologise for that omission. So all that's left to say is that coffee and tea will be served in Angel Street, where we were yesterday, in the first floor restaurant area, and the next session will start at 11:30. Thanks, everybody.
No, no, you're grand.
PowerPoint printout of the Basel and
Yeah.
it's gone.